What's up, everybody, and welcome to Cine James Movie Talk. I am your host, Mr. Cine James himself, and today I am doing my full spoiler review on the biopic movie Michael. But before we get into that, as always, you know what to do. If you like the show, you like the content, you're listening to me on YouTube, hit that like, hit that subscribe. If you're listening to me on Spotify, tap that bell, tap that follow, show me some love, and as always, I greatly appreciate all of your support. So this episode is long overdue. I've done some other movies before this. Should have gotten to this sooner, but there's some other things that I wanted to discuss and talk about. And the other reason I held off on doing this spoiler review is because the movie has been incredibly popular, which again, as I said in my non-spoiler review, should be no surprise considering we're talking about the greatest entertainer of all time. So I didn't want to do a spoiler review early. So I wanted to let everybody go, more people go and enjoy seeing this movie. But at this time, I am doing a spoiler review. So if for whatever reason you haven't seen this movie yet, don't continue. Go see the movie, come back, and then check out this episode. So the movie Michael it's the highest budgeted biopic movie, and it is currently right now we are a little around a little over a month. This movie came out on April 24th, so we are a little over a month that this movie has been out, and it is currently sitting at a box office worldwide of over $800 million. The highest grossing biopic movie was the Queen movie Bohemian Rhapsody, and I want to say that was around 900 to 911 million. And it looks like, and it's possible that Michael could go on to break that record, but if not, it's going to get really close. Again, it's done over 800 million just in a little over a month of being out. So with the popularity that it still has, and this is one of those movies that people are going back to see again and again and again. And I would have to imagine that this movie will have re-releases in theaters, maybe like on his birthday. They might do an anniversary re-release on the date of his passing. So I would strongly say, let me say this. I don't see a reason why this movie won't beat Bohemian Rhapsody as the highest grossing biopic movie of all time. But it's got a little over 100 million to go, so we will see what the next month or two brings for this movie. So once again, just as a warning, I am doing a spoiler review. So let's go ahead and get into my spoiler thoughts on Michael. As I said in my non-spoiler review, this is a fun movie. I had an awesome time with this movie in theaters. It's a feel-good movie. And again, this is a movie that plays all the hits. I didn't go over this in my non-spoiler review. I wanted to save it for this, but this did leave out a lot of the controversial things in Michael's life. And actually, they did film the allegations. They did film those parts. And originally, the Michael Jackson estate approved for that to be filmed and put in the movie. And then come to find out, during one of the settlements that had happened with one of the incidents back in 1994, I want to say, there was a clause, or there was something in the contract that said that this incident could not be made public or could not be told through whatever future medias that may be involved. So after they had shot a lot of the allegation stuff for the movie, the Jackson estate pulled it and said that they could not be used. So they ended up having to go back and do $15 million worth of reshoots for this movie. But so that has been a controversial thing with critics for this movie. A lot of the critics have stated that how this movie does leave out a lot of the controversial parts of Michael's life. And to be honest, my opinion on that is it didn't need to be in this movie. It doesn't need to be in this. This movie does have it does have some of the drama and stuff in Michael's life. This movie primarily, the drama with this movie primarily focuses around Michael wanting to break away from his brothers, break away from the Jackson Five, and go on to his superstardom, to go on to build his solo career. And a lot of the drama and the tensions revolve around Michael and his father, Joe Jackson. But I am of the mind that I don't feel the allegation stuff needed to be in this movie. And to be honest with you too, where the time frame that this movie takes place in, which this movie takes place from the Jackson 5 era to the beginning of the bad era, so it takes place around a 20-year gap. So roughly from 1966 20-22 year gap from 1966 to 1988. That's the timeline it covers of Michael's career, in which I'm not a full complete Michael historian, but I believe, if I'm and chat and people could comment and tell me if I'm wrong in this information, but during the time span that this movie takes place in, I don't remember, or especially when we get to like the thriller and the bad timeline, I don't remember any of the allegations starting up or being a thing during that timeline. If my memory serves and my history on Michael serves, those allegations and things didn't come up until like the early 90s going into the 2000s. Excuse me. Those allegations didn't come up during that timeline. So I'm not, and again, I could be wrong in this, so I'm not understanding, unless the thought is when they originally filmed this movie, they were going to make it one movie and go through that. I'm not really sure, but again, I'm not understanding why that's such a critical thing with critics, why they felt that 100% needed to be in this movie with the timeline that they presented. Now, there's a lot of rumors and a lot of things, and there's been a lot of stuff in media that have said, due to the box office of Michael, that it is all but confirmed, I want to say, that they are in development for Michael Part 2, Michael 2, whatever they're going to call it. And it's going to be really interesting to see when they get to that point to filming it, how they're going to handle the allegations during that timeline. Because if we do a sequel, the sequel, I would have to think, would start up during and take place, would be from the bad era up until his passing in 2009. So you're going to cover the bad era, you're going to cover the dangerous era, his history album, the Invincible album, and you're going to go from that timeline from the late 80s to his passing in 2009. And in that 90s timeline, you're going to cover a lot of the controversial parts, a big part controversial of his life. So I don't know how they're going to film that and leave a lot of the allegations out when they get to the sequel. But for this movie, it's not something that was needed to be in here. Again, this movie it's a movie you can take the family to go see. It's a very upbeat movie. The pacing is really good in this. Again, this movie, as I talked about in my non-spoiler review, this movie plays the hits. It plays the hits. It's a feel-good while focusing on the backstory of it, which again is Michael wanting to break away from his brothers, break away from the family, the family business part of it, and go on to have his solo career, which, as we all know, led him to his superstardom. The opening of this movie, as I've talked about in previous episodes, and we were actually going to have an episode on this about movie intros. This is one of those that has a memorable intro. It's got a very hype intro. It's got one of those intros that it just gets you ready. And from the moment of this intro, you are energetic. You're ready to go. You are in this movie. And I really like that they used, for those that know, they had the one intro part where it's his legs, it's him like walking across, like leg shot down, and it does the spin, and he's in the pose on his toes, and it's has like the lighting that goes through it. They changed the name. I believe it was like Optimum Productions or whatever was underneath that. But for the fans and those that know, that was the Moonwalker logo. And that was when they introduced that logo back in the late 80s. It used to say MJJ Productions. They would switch that between MJJ Productions and Moonwalker, but that's an old school classic logo for Michael. So that was really cool to see as the intro. And this movie starts right up. It starts right up. It starts right at 1988. So it shows him walking, and I believe that is the famous Wembley Arena concert, which was for his Bad Era tour. And it starts right up, and it's already got you hype. It's already got you wanting to have a fun time with this movie. From the intro, you just want to get out of your seat and dance. I mean, that's what this movie makes you do. But we get that hype intro, and then it goes from the opening to showing him getting ready to take the stage for the Wembley show for his Bad tour, and then we get right into where it says Gary, Indiana, 1966, and it goes into showing them rehearsing, practicing them as kids, the Jackson 5. And what I like about this is, again, I'm also a fan of this with movies. I don't need every single. I like how this gets us right into it. It doesn't go back, and you don't have to get like a full origin story. It doesn't have to go back and show, like, for example, it doesn't go back and show Michael being born. It doesn't go back and show like Joe and Catherine meeting, getting married. And it doesn't go back and show how like they started to become the singers and do all that. The other movie, and I want to reference this movie, if you get a chance to see it, it's on YouTube. You can check this out. It came out 1992, I want to say. I remember watching this on TV. They did a movie series. I want to say it was ABC. It was on ABC or NBC. And it was called Jackson's An American Dream. And this movie, the current biopic movie, Michael, and Jackson's An American Dream, are almost similar, except for in Jackson's An American Dream, they go through the origin where Catherine meets Joe, and they show like Michael being born, and then they show how they became the Jackson 5, which is really cool. That movie is a good movie. If you get a chance, I recommend you watch that movie. You can make your comparisons between that and Michael. But the movie is called Jackson's An American Dream. Excuse me. So, but what I like about this movie is we get right into it. We don't have an origin retelling, and I like that with movies sometimes. A lot of times with movies, I don't need to have the origin told to me again. For example, like we get to like Batman movies. Every Batman movie that comes out, or when they do a new interpretation of Batman, I don't need to know the telling of his story again. Same thing with Superman. They did that really well with the Tom Holland Spider-Man when we get introduced to him in Civil War, and then in his solo movies, we don't go back. We don't get a whole origin retelling of how he became Spider-Man and the whole death of Uncle Ben and all that stuff. We're right into it, and I like that a lot of times with movies. So again, this movie starts off 1966. We got the Jacksons, we got the brothers there, dancing and rehearsing, and then we see Joe Jackson, which is wonderfully played by I think it's Coleman Domingo. His portrayal of Joe Jackson in this movie is a mix of seriousness and comedy, and that's the one thing. Again, this movie, when I say it is a feel-good movie, if this makes sense in what I'm saying, is that they do hit on the way that Joe was, and all the stories you've heard about how Joe was with the kids, and all those things where they had the stuff where they said he was the different things about him being abusive, and how strict he was and how tough he was on the kids. And you see that in this movie, but they also do it in a way, and the way that Coleman Domingo plays Joe Jackson, and the way they present it with the pacing and the scenes in this movie, they also have some moments where they put some comedy into things. And we've all seen some of the viral stuff going around with some of the scenes in this movie based on that. But we get really introduced right away to how Joe Jackson is with the kids, which the first scene in that is really good. And then it picks right up and we're going into, it kind of goes into like a Jackson 5 montage where it shows them, rehearsing. It shows their outfits getting made. And it shows, we get more of also Nia Long as Katherine Jackson, and her portrayal as Katherine Jackson in this movie is absolutely fantastic. Also, too, the actor that is playing a young Michael Jackson, and I have his name here, and as I'm talking, I'm looking down at my notes that I took from the movie. His name is Giuliano Cruz-Valdi. I think that's how you say his name. I could be really wrong on that, but his portrayal of young Michael Jackson in this is absolutely fantastic. All of the cast in this movie does a really good job of portraying the real life counterparts in this. But Giuliano does, I mean, from the dance moves, from the singing, from the look, does a fantastic job as young Michael. So we get to a Jackson 5 montage again where they're performing, rehearsing. You see the outfits being made. And then also what they do in this too is they really highlight on, this is where we get to see young Michael starting to become that star, because we see him watching the clips. As we all know, James Brown was one of his biggest, if not biggest, inspirations for being a performer. So we get to see those clips where he is practicing mimicking James Brown's dance moves. And then we get to, I want to say it's 1968, and they're performing. I believe it's the Regal Theater in Chicago. And this was an important moment because this is where they're discovered, pretty much where they're discovered by Motown. I believe the lady's name was Susan Day Passe. She was a talent developer at Motown. So she is there watching them perform. And then we get to go to, 1969. And again, this movie does a good job with pacing. It does a good job of getting us from point A to point B to point C. It just keeps you moving. It keeps you excited. It keeps you involved in this. So they did a really good job with the pacing of this movie. So we get to 1969 and we get to where now they're recording at Motown. And we get like that cute moment where Berry Gordy, who is the founder of Motown, is trying to tell Michael, hey, stop dancing while we're recording. You got to stay still. And you just get to see again the young man that's playing Michael is just so much fun to watch in these scenes. He really captures that young version of Michael Jackson really well. And again, it just shows you the energy. Like he's trying to tell Michael to stay still, and he can. And it just shows you that energy that he had. And it also shows you too, and this was something in Michael's life as well, the relationship he had with Berry Gordy, where he looked at Berry Gordy in a lot of ways. And this also goes into the tension he had with his father, Joe. But he looked at Berry Gordy in a lot of ways as that father figure. And you see that in this movie where he gives him the hug. And Berry Gordy spent a lot of time, teaching Michael the back ends also of the music business. So that was a good scene in the movie. That was a good part in there with young Michael and Barry. And then it also gets us to, we get to another kind of Jackson 5 montage where now they're under the Motown banner and they're doing their live performances on television. And we see them with the record sales moving forward and the popularity that they're building as the Jackson 5. We then we move along a little bit where now we're into 1971 and we get to where now they are in their famous the Jackson Estate House in Encino, California, and this is also where Michael meets Bill Bray, who was obviously his real life it was his security guard, and we also get this scene here as well. And we get a couple other scenes with this in the movie where you see the contrast in the relationships he has with his parents, where when he has his interactions with his father, Joe, it's very tense. It's very standoffish. And you don't really get any sense of love at all between him and his father. Whereas when you get to the relationship he has with his mother, you really see that closeness that he has of his mom, that softness that he has of his mother. There's just a lot of genuine care there. And again, Nia Long's performance of Katherine Jackson is really good, and it comes through in these scenes with Michael, and they're watching Singing in the Rain, which again, you're seeing these different things throughout Michael's life that were inspirations to him and his dancing and performing. We get to a really good spot where they're performing I'll Be There. And you really, again, the one thing that this does when they show young Michael and they show the Jackson 5, they really do a good job in this movie of showing, highlighting, and showing you and really honing in on Michael, and how you can see at this young age, you already knew that he was going to be he was going to go beyond this, that he's the star. He is the focal point of the Jackson 5, all that stuff. And when they do this performance of I'll Be There, it's really fun to watch, again, the young actor playing Michael. It's so much fun to watch him and his portrayal of this. It's such a good performance. After we have the I'll Be There, we fast forward. Again, the pacing that this movie does, it goes from point A to point B to point C. We fast forward now to 1978, where we have a young adult Michael, now played by Michael's real life nephew, Jafar Jackson. And I just want to say this about, again, the Giuliano Cruvalde, who was the actor who played young Michael. He did a fantastic job. But now that we get to Jafar Jackson's portrayal of Michael, he is Michael in this movie. He is the embodiment of his uncle, and his portrayal of Michael is absolutely amazing. You can tell he put in so much time to make sure that he did the best version, and he delivered to us the best version of his uncle. And I would have to imagine, I was talking about this with one of my friends, that I couldn't imagine what was going through his mind as he's doing this movie. And then to see himself in this movie, it has to be a lot of emotions, because I mean, I don't know what that would feel like to get the opportunity to play your uncle, Michael Jackson, in a movie about his life. And I would have to imagine for him, there were so many emotions, and just the overwhelmment, the pressure to deliver that type of role, just absolutely amazing in this. So, but we get to 1978, and we see him working with Quincy Jones, the famous mega producer Quincy Jones, who would go on to produce, I want to say he produced a lot of Michael's work, going from Off the Wall, Thriller, Bad. He was a big part of Michael's life, and a big part of bringing the sound and all of the iconic stuff of Michael to life. So we now get to where they're working on his first solo album, Off the Wall, and we get that scene that is already iconic. It is, I have in this movie, I have three, I should say, I'm sorry. I have three really of my favorite scenes in this movie, and an honorable mention scene, but three favorite ones to me. And that is this scene right here, where we get to where he is recording Don't Stop Till You Get Enough, and it transitions, again, the hype moment in this. And again, watching this in theaters, it makes you want to dance. We get where he's in the sound booth and he's recording it, and then it transitions into making the music video for Don't Stop Till You Get Enough. And it's then it goes into a montage scene where Off the Wall is being released, and it's showing you that his early rise of his solo career, and that early rise, continuing of his superstardom. And it is such an iconic scene, and they did an amazing job of putting this together for that scene. But I have my favorite scenes in this movie. That is one of them. The other one that we're going to get to is the Motown 25. When he does the performance of Billie Jean, which is where the first time we get to see the moonwalk. We got to see the moonwalk on live television. And then for me, because for me as a kid, my Michael Jackson era for me started with the Bad album, and then like it started like my Michael Jackson, my era was Michael Jackson in the bad era and went on to Dangerous and all that stuff. And then I circled back to Thriller and Off the Wall. But for me, Michael Jackson in my first listenings of Michael Jackson was from the Bad album. So my other favorite scene in this is the Bad performance at the end from the 1988 the Wembley concert. But we get to, and you're talking about the montage of Don't Stop Till You Get Enough, goes through all that stuff. And then, and Off the Wall for his first solo album, sold over 20 million copies and was certified diamond. Again, really solidifying Michael and his rise with his solo career. And then we get the moments in this where we do get those scenes that does show, I guess, I say this very lovingly. I say this in just in the ways that you get to see it in the movie. We get to see kind of, I guess, if you want to say the extravagant side. I don't know if I want to say the weird side of Michael, but we get to see this side of Michael here where we show him buying the exotic animals, where he buys the llama. He has in the one scene in the where he's talking to his sister LaToya. We see he has the snake in the room with him, and we get to also where he buys, obviously we knew this, and this was, again, they highlighted this back. I remember this as a kid, how they just thought it was weird when he purchases, and it was a funny scene when he purchases the famous Bubbles, the chimp. And that is the one thing, and I know this has kind of been a take too, where obviously Bubbles was a CG, it was CG in this, and it does kind of, it does and it doesn't. The CG does kind of take you out a little bit in this movie, but overall, though, it's not that distracting. But it does kind of take you out a little bit. But there is that comedy with it. And again, when we highlight on Joe coming out and seeing Bubbles, how he just kind of has that laugh and everything. So they take some of the weird moments of Michael's life and they do throw some comedy to that. And then we start to see which would be a controversial part of Michael's life, where he gets his first plastic surgery with his nose. And then we also, in that scene, we do get the glimpse of the early stages of his vitiligo, and which again would be another controversial part of his life. We continue to also see, as we talked about, one of the backstory of this movie, and a focal point of this movie is Michael wanting to break away from his brothers and go to continue his solo career. And we see we get to see where that does become a tension. Again, that adds more to the tension with him and his father. And then we see that with the family meeting, where Joe calls that family meeting, and it's setting up, I want to say at this time, it's setting up the Triumph Tour. I think that's what because at this point they weren't the Jackson 5 anymore. I think they were the Jacksons, because I think it was around this time that they had another brother, Randy, who was born after Michael. He has now been a part of the group, so now it's the Jacksons. And you see the tension, especially in this scene. You see the tension with him and his father, where again, and you see the intimidation. Again, Coleman Domingo plays Joe really well, because this is one of those scenes where you see how intimidated, especially Michael, how intimidated he is of his father. And if you think about it, it's just such that dynamic, and that what they show in those scenes is, here's Michael, who at this point in time is becoming a mega solo star. He can go and pretty much do what he wants to do. But here he is, backed down by his father. Again, just a really good scene, and it really builds on that tension and furthers that whole point of Michael wanting to break away. And then we have like little clips. We go on the tour, and then we get the office scene, which I want to say it's 1981. I want to say in this, where Michael he has the meeting with the executives and the lawyers, and he's wanting to establish his solo career. And this is where he meets, I think it's John Branca, and this is played by Miles Teller. And John Branca was, and again, in real life, that was Michael's attorney, and he was his attorney for roughly, I want to say, 30 years of Michael's life. And this is where we get the scene where Miles Teller's character, John Branca, the attorney, basically tells Michael that he thinks he wants to work with him. He wants to help him because he thinks he's going to be the greatest of all time. And I really like this scene because what this scene also does is it shows the contrast of Michael Jackson, because everyone always kind of looked at Michael as this funny, like really, I guess if you want to say lovingly, weird and an extravagant person. But there was another side of Michael. There was a serious business side of Michael. And if you ever listen to a lot of different things, some of the people that worked with Michael over time always said that he was a very shrewd and very solid business person and knew what he wanted to do. And so this scene shows that serious side of Michael and how, I guess you want to say, direct and demanding he was about his solo career and the objectives that he had. But this also leads to where he tells Branca that his first act is to fire his dad, which is, again, it adds to the tension, but it also, there's a comedic part to it where even when you go back to go back a little bit, when he made Off the Wall, he tells the record execs that they have to go and talk to his father about getting the permission and stuff for him to go and do this solo album. He couldn't do that himself. And again, that is just such a, here he is at this place where he can do the things he wants to do, and he's got that power, but he cannot. He is so intimidated by his father that he cannot face to face tell his dad these things. He has to have other people do it for him. And that does add to some of the comedic spots of this movie. But again, it shows you just that tension and that he had with his father. So this also does lead, so he asked for John Branca. This first task is to fire his dad, and that's where we get the fax coming. And the fax, his dad gets faxed that he's fired, and we get that scene, really good scene with Joe and Catherine, where Catherine, he's telling her that he's going to do this and this and this to the boys and this and this and this to Michael, and she basically tells him, "No, you're not anymore. They are grown-ups. They have to make and do their own things." And then she tells him too that he needs to be thanking Michael, because without Michael, they wouldn't be where they're at. And because he says that Joe's stance on everything was, and he's not he's not fully wrong in it, because he was he was the force behind putting the Jackson 5 together and getting them to where they got to, but it was also built on the charisma, the talent of Michael. And then when Michael went on to break away from his brothers, that success continued the Jackson name. And that is essentially what this scene was setting up, was that, no, Joe, this is because of Michael. And then we get a fun spot here where we get to see Michael with that kid side to him, that they go to the toy store, which leads us to, again, this scene is viral. You see this in reels everywhere, and it's a funny scene, but it's also a sad scene where we get to him. The famous Twister scene where he buys Twister and he brings it home, and his brothers are outside and they're playing basketball, and he wants them to go play Twister with him, and they joke about it with him, they laugh it off with him, and they don't want to play Twister with him. And you can kind of see in that scene, what they really focus on is, you see Michael kind of giggling and laughing as he's getting his responses, but you also can see his sadness. And you also, this really, again, and then he goes on to play Twister with Bubbles, his chimp. And it really shows, the one thing that this movie does do as well is it shows Michael's isolation, I guess, if you want to say, and it is sad. It shows some ways why Michael was how he was, in a sense, where he just kind of was he just kind of was in his own world. And this scene really kind of just focused on that. And then we get to go, of course, we go from there. We get to see where Joe confronts Michael about the facts, which was kind of, again, it's a tension, but there was a little bit of comedy with that. And then we get to where we see, again, the another side of Michael, where he goes to the hospitals and he spends times with children that have terminal diseases, and all that stuff. And we really get a lot of that time, and you really get to see where Michael, a lot of times, just in his conversations that he has with these kids, where he, again, he's a kid himself still, and you can kind of tell in a lot of these scenes where he's just more comfortable talking with the younger kids and being a kid himself than he is outside of there. So they're really touching. They were really, really good scenes of him spending time with the kids in the hospital. We get to where now he is having the meetings with his attorney again, John, and this is another good segment of the movie where they're having the early plannings for Thriller, the album that would become Thriller. And this leads into another good scene in the movie where we get the segment, I call it the Beat It segment, where he goes and meets with the gang members and dancers. So for those that don't know, in the music video Beat It, Michael actually used real LA gang members along with the dancers, but he used real Crips and Bloods in the music video. In this scene, it was really cool to see him have those interactions. He goes and he's working with the dancers on the famous Beat It dance. So again, the way Jafar Jackson plays his uncle and the way he delivers as Michael in this scene, it is really, really awesome. Then we get to, and I didn't even know this. I didn't know this until I kept watching this, and I kept going, who is that actor? Who is that person? They look really familiar. I didn't know this until after. But then we get to where he goes to have his meeting with the president of CBS, and I believe it's Walter Yetnikoff, who, I did not know this, was played by Mike Myers. Again, I'm watching this in the theater, and when I watched it the next time, of course, I knew then. I was like, oh, yes, of course, that's Mike Myers. But the whole time I'm in the theater, the first time watching, I'm like, why does that guy look familiar? And it's Mike Myers. And this was an iconic part of Michael's history. And it was iconic in music history. So this is where we get into Michael wanting his music videos played on MTV. And just to give you a quick little context to the history, this place in time, MTV did not highlight or play music videos from Black artists. And Michael broke through on that. And the way that it was portrayed is that CBS, and in this scene is where the CBS president, he calls over to MTV and he demands that Michael's videos get played on MTV. And the way that this actually was a thing in the history of this, where CBS had threatened, if they were not going to play Michael's videos, CBS had threatened to pull all their other artists. So again, and Michael was really firm, and in real life as well as in the movie, he really pushed to open those doors for Black artists to have their music videos featured on MTV. So we get that. Then we get to another, again, my other favorite scene in this movie is the iconic live performance from Motown 25, where he performs Billie Jean, and we get the debut. And the reason why this scene was iconic is because this was the first time a live audience, he did the moonwalk live. Again, just iconic and all the stuff he did. And the funny thing about this performance was Michael Jackson actually did not like this performance. He thought his performance here stunk, and it went on to be one of the most iconic live performances of all time. And again, further cementing him as the megastar. And then, so we're going through all of this, and in between all this is when he's trying to name what the name of the album is going to be. And then, of course, we see in this where he lands on Thriller. And then it goes to, again, another awesome scene in this movie where we get showing him making the Thriller music video. And it highlights in on the famous part of the video, the dance segment. And that part was really cool. And again, just, I cannot say enough how awesome Jafar Jackson was playing Michael in this. Again, the work he had to put in, the commitment, the dedication to portray his uncle so spot on the way he did, just absolutely amazing. In this scene where they're doing the Thriller dance and they're setting up how he wants the scene shot for the making of the music video and all that. Again, such a fantastic scene, and they had the whole sequence spot on. So during this, again, Michael now, and for those that don't know, with Thriller went on to become, and it still is to this day, the biggest selling album of all time. And I'm really surprised. What I am surprised about in this movie is that they didn't put the Grammy scene in here. The night where he, and I believe, again, my history on my Michael history is not 100% on so many things, but I believe he won 8 Grammys that night. It was 8 or 9 Grammys that night for Thriller. And I still want to say to this day, he still has the record, I think, for the most Grammys won by an artist in one night. And I'm surprised that they didn't have that in this movie, especially being obviously, of course, tied into Thriller and being the biggest selling album of all time. And to this day, still, I want to say, it still is, I think, the biggest selling album of all time. So we get to now, we're setting up I didn't know. I was telling someone this the other day talking about this movie. I did not know that when they were setting up the Victory Tour, which would go to be the final tour that Michael would do with his brothers, I didn't know that Joe Jackson had talked to Don King. I didn't know that Don King was involved in this tour. I did not know that. I just always knew Don King as the mega boxing promoter, obviously being famous with Mike Tyson. But I did not know that he had an involvement or a meeting or a conversation with Joe Jackson about promoting and doing the Victory Tour. So again, we get where the tension builds with him and his father, where his father basically tells him, you're going to do this tour with your brothers. And again, Michael gives in. Well, at first he's standoffish, but you get that scene where he goes into his room and his dad is in there looking at the Thriller album, and he's talking to Michael, telling basically that how no one's going to ever understand him but his family and all this stuff. And that basically kind of telling him he's going to, but saying to him, hey, you're going to do this tour. You need to do this tour for your brothers and your family and all that stuff. And so, and again, I didn't know that Don King was involved in this, but this is how they get tied into the famous Pepsi commercial, and which, of course, the commercial and his run with Pepsi, but the commercial is very famous, and they show this in the movie, how when they're filming it, this was where he got his hair caught on fire by one of the pyro that went off and landed in the back of his hair on fire and ended him up in the hospital. And we get to this is kind of a very, like, when you see Michael in the hospital, this is where you get a very vulnerable Michael. And again, they really focus on how Joe Jackson was. And we get to where the doctor's trying to explain to them Michael's condition. And Joe is just really focused and asking the doctor, of all the things to ask this doctor about your son, is he going to be able to perform again? And you really, again, they really focus on where Joe was with his kids and his motivating factors with this, whereas any other father or any other concerned person would be more concerned about the well-being of the person instead of whether they can perform again or not. So you get that good scene with Joe and Catherine and the other kids when he's asking the doctor, is Michael going to be able to perform again? We then again get another good moment with him and his mother. Again, showing the relationship that they had versus the relationship with his father. You get Michael yet again, while Michael is he's dealing with his situation, his condition in the hospital. You see him going around and still talking to the kids that are in the hospital. And again, it really touches on and focuses on the kind of heart that Michael Jackson had and what really mattered to him. And if you think about it, where he's in this condition at the hospital, and he's thinking more about the kids, and he's thinking more about spending time with them. And it was really, again, some more touching scenes. And then this is where, when he's in the hospital and his attorney, John Branca, goes to visit him, where he tells him that he's basically, he's going to do this tour. He wants to do this tour with his brothers. And we basically get that, he's going to do this tour. And then he understands that there's a bigger purpose for him. There's a bigger plan for him, but he is going to do this tour. And this leads us into the performance. They get to the last performance. And I want to say this last performance is in, I believe it's in Los Angeles. Yes. And this is where we get the iconic performance of Human Nature. Again, beautiful in the way that Jafar Jackson embodies his uncle is just fantastic in this scene. And then we get to the finale of the concert. And then before this and during this, you have Joe meeting with reporters and everything. And he's talking about how they're going to take this tour and they're going to go international. They're going to plan more dates. They're going to really build on this thing. But we get to the finale of the show where they're doing working day and night. And this is where Michael, again, throughout the movie, he can't face his father. He can't tell his father no. He can't tell his father that he's his own person and he wants to go and do these things. So in this, we get the finale where he pretty much does it in the way that he knows how. So as they're coming to the end of their performance, he makes the announcement that this is the end of their tour. This is the final show. And that is his way of telling Joe he is now done performing as the Jacksons and he is now ready to fully embrace his solo career. And then we get that spot where he's exiting the stage. Joe goes to confront him about it. And then Bill steps in and tells Joe it's over. And then we get to where Michael's walking away, and it takes us back now to where we started in the movie. It takes us back to 1988. He's standing there. He's getting pumped up. He's getting ready to take the stage. You hear the crowd chanting Michael, and we get that shot where he turns around and he looks at Bill. And you would swear, and everyone's right when they say this, you would swear for that one moment that the spirit of Michael, like we were looking at Michael Jackson. We were not looking at Jafar Jackson. We were looking at Michael as if he took over his nephew. It was just such a cool moment and a cool scene. And then we get him going out to the stage and he performs bad. And that is the finale. That is the end of the movie, the end of Michael. So again, this movie, if you have not gone to see this in theaters, you need to go do it. You really need to go see this movie in theaters. It is a fun ride from start to finish. It makes you want to get out of your seat and dance. It has its moments of drama in here between him and his dad that adds to the story itself. The pacing in this is good. And again, it plays all the hits. If you're a Michael Jackson fan, you're going to love this movie. If you're not a Michael Jackson fan, you're going to love this movie. It's going to bring you into wanting to learn more about Michael, wanting to listen to more of his music. And that's the one thing, been the awesome thing about this movie, is that this movie has played for generations. Okay, because there have been, you think Michael passed in 2009, there's a whole generation or so of people that were not around when Michael Jackson was a performer. And that's the beautiful thing about his music. And that's the beautiful thing about this movie, is that this brings people of all ages and generations, young and old, together to enjoy the king of pop, the greatest entertainer of all time. So again, I encourage you, please go see this movie, see it again and again. It is worth sitting in a theater with your family. It's worth sitting in a theater with friends and just having a fun time. So that is my spoiler review for Michael. Again, guys, I appreciate all the love and support. If you're listening to me on YouTube, hit that like, hit that subscribe. If you're listening to me on Spotify, please tap the bell, tap the follow. Social media, Facebook, Instagram. You can find me at Cine James Movie Talk. Just to give you a rundown of what is ahead coming up, I have my non-spoiler review for the new horror movie Backrooms. I have my full spoiler review for Mortal Kombat 2. And then coming up, when I see it, I'm going to have my non-spoiler review for Masters of the Universe. And that's going to be a fun episode, because I'm also going to talk about the one from my childhood, the Dolph Lundgren Masters of the Universe from the 80s. So we're going to have a fun time talking about that. And then we're also, because it is the 35th anniversary, they are doing a re-release in theaters. We are going to talk about one of my all-time favorite movies, Terminator 2 Judgment Day. So you're not going to want to miss those episodes. Again, to keep track on all the episodes when they release, hit that like and subscribe on YouTube, tap the bell and the follow on Spotify. And as always, guys, thank you so much for all of your support. And then also, before I forget, coming up here soon, I do another show with my co-host, the Big Rob Theory, called Super Cinema Brothers, where we talk about the movies. And those episodes are going to be releasing. We're going to be releasing our first 2 episodes here very soon, where we talk about the Star Wars prequel trilogy and we talk about the Star Wars, the original trilogy. So those episodes you are not going to want to miss, and you're going to want to tune into further episodes of Super Cinema Brothers with myself and the Big Rob Theory. Once again, guys, that is going to do it for this episode. Thank you so much for tuning in. I greatly appreciate all the love and support. And until next time, I will see you at the box office.